Hi, I'm Nancy Spector. I know a lot of people in the room. Can you all hear me? Is this actually works, that the microphone is working?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay.
The microphone is not amplifying. It's just going to the camera.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you need to raise your voice.
Okay, well, I think we should all do a little bit of a shake and relax, because that was a lot of information. A lot of information that is very important and very key, I think, to programs from the design kind of level. But what Tiffany and I, I'm going to talk about my background a little, she'll talk about her background a little. We both came into this field a long time ago. I've been at the gallery 16 years, and you've been at the...
I've been at the Buffalo Zoo since 1996. I don't care to count the number of years.
So we've seen a number of changes taking place over the past years. And so I think the way we planned to talk today was to kind of share the presentation. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my background. I have a background in both science and the arts, so I'm very fortunate in that way. I can understand a lot of the science and math stuff, and then I have a degree as a Bachelor of Fine Arts too, but I did not come into the museum field with an education degree or a museum studies degree, and I work in the education department right now. So I came from where many of you either are or are coming from, which is a background as a teaching artist. Really, I got out of art school, and I came to Buffalo and I began to teach in schools. And it's through that long kind of learning curve of being in schools and working with teachers and now running school programs at a museum, which is a very different place than a school, that I have come to learn a lot about education, but not really from the point of view of the teacher in the classroom as much as from someone in a different kind of institution. I think Tiffany and I share that. So that's my background. I've been at the gallery, I think I said 16 years, so I'll let Tiffany introduce herself too and tell a little bit. Oh, you have one. She has
and conveniently,
one.
I have a pocket, so
Okay.
I don't have to hold it. So I'm Tiffany Vanderwerf, and just as Nancy said, I don't come into the education field from the education end of things either. I work at the Buffalo Zoo, and it's kind of like the weird sheep of this family in that we're a living museum. And I come at it from a background of research. So in a past life, I was a researcher. I come at it from a very strong science background. And when I got to the Buffalo Zoo, I actually started there as a volunteer in the education department and thought, oh my gosh, this is what I love to do, and I happen to be good at it. So over the course of my years at the Buffalo Zoo, I took on the role of educator and, just like Nancy, sort of educated myself in what is it that schools want and what is it that schools need, so that we in our education departments can provide what those teachers are looking for. And so with that background, essentially we are you. So this presentation has very little glitz and glamour. It is sort of the stripped down, here's how we put together our programs kind of presentation. Very sort of practical. We'll give you examples of what we do, and you all have templates of what we do. And rather than really looking at this from a full-blown curriculum guide perspective, it looks at it a little bit more from a lesson plan perspective, which is a little bit easier to look at in this immediate setting. But before we get started, we just need to do a little bit of evaluation of you guys. And this is going to kind of seem like you're back in the classroom for what we're going to ask you to do. And a little bit of it is going to seem a little silly in what we're asking you to do. But we need to kind of know our audience in the room and know how familiar you are with lesson planning and with creating curriculum guides. So we're going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 4 where you are on this scale. So if you are a number 1, you have never heard of lesson planning or curriculum guides, you don't do it at all, and you're just not familiar with it. If you're a number 2, you have heard of lesson planning and curriculum guides, and you might have started to attempt it, but you really are a newbie at it. Number 3 is that you do them. You're not super confident in them, in that you probably couldn't explain it to a friend or to a coworker very well. You kind of do a general outline. And number 4 is you could probably be up here teaching it in place of us. You know it really well. You know how to create lesson guides, full-blown curriculum plans. So now is the sort of silly thing. We need you to
be like students.
Either close your eyes.
A reminder again of what your people in your classrooms are dealing with.
So you'll either need to close your eyes for this or sort of just put your head down, because we don't want any of you to feel like, oh, if I'm a number 1, I'm not going to admit that I'm a number 1 and I've never heard of lesson planning. Or, oh, if I'm a number 4 and I'm an expert at it, I don't want to toot my own horn and raise my hand.
No peeking.
This is so you feel anonymous enough. So I'm just going to kind of ask you to put your heads down or close your eyes or, do something so you're not really looking. So raise your hand if you are a number 1. And if you remember, number 1 is you haven't done lesson planning before at all. You've never really heard of it or a full-blown curriculum planning. Okay. Now I want you to raise your hand if you are a number 2. You've heard of it. You've really not done it. You might have tried to start it, but you know you're not very good at it.
Or you think you're not very good at it.
Now, raise your hand if you're a number 3. You do lesson planning, might be outline form, but you don't necessarily feel comfortable maybe explaining it to other people. And raise your hand if you are a number 4. You know it. You are good at lesson planning and making curriculum guides. You do it all the time for all of your programs, pretty in-depth. Okay. All right. You can all look up. That was really good. It was very informative.
Yes, it was very informative.
Okay, Nancy's gonna kind of start out in talking about what she does, and then I'm gonna chime in last.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to say is I listened to everything today, and I wanted to share with you a story. I don't know if my other 2 people are here. This is a story from my tour coordinator, or our tour coordinator at the Albright Knox Art Gallery. We have tours at the gallery of our artwork. They are led by people that are called docents in museums. Guides are often called docents. A lot of people don't know that. There's something that often, what's a docent? And after a high school class came through our museum and did one of our tours with a docent, the teacher, who was a younger teacher, a high school English teacher who had brought her class, which is a wonderful thing when they're making that connection, that I can teach English through art. She said to Lindsay, I have to raise my expectations for these students. What they talked about and the connections they made and the things they said in front of those works of art blew me away, and I cannot believe that they were able to do this, and I haven't given them that opportunity. This is going to change everything I think about how I plan my lessons. And so when she shared that with me, that was a real, for us, that's a wonderful thing to hear. But I think that after hearing what we just heard, one of the things that I find myself coming back to over and over and over again, and this is going to cause problems because I'm not a laptop person, over and over, we're going to come to the realization that the arts things that we do are all about these standards and always have been in many ways. The ways that we look at works of art, the ways that we talk about them with our viewers, whether we're the guide at a museum or whether we're talking as artists with students over a piece of literature or a piece of work, we are doing this. And I think that's one of the things that I see about everything we have written about our tours, about our lesson plans. The expectations that they're saying that you need to rise to are there for us to get to. And I think Julie kept saying this. So I think this is a real power. I think it happens in a zoo as well. I always say about my older kids, the world has to teach them. They won't listen to anything, my own kids. Some of their things I could tell them over and over, and then they come back in the world and they say, you know what happened? I learned this. And I'm like, yeah, I said that like 10 years ago, but. So, This is a real world situation, the zoo. The art is made by people who, they already have the content. Artists have the content. It is embedded in the work, and you need to find it and present it in a way so that whoever you have with the kids has been empowered to pull that stuff out. So with that said, and that's a real current term, everyone always says with that said, I have to make sure that I don't get off this page. Okay. And see, there's nothing on my screen, so I don't know how to get, I guess I go,
What do you want to do?
I want to get to lesson plans. But how, you have to, you see there's no,
I can see it.
oh, you can see it, okay.
Here?
Well, actually, we are on lesson plans. Okay, scroll down in the middle. I can do it now. Now that I see the thing, I know where to go. Okay, and I'm not really good at it.
I can actually just sit there and take instructions from
Okay, all right. Scroll down.
Once you get up,
All right,
stand there.
scroll down. Thank you, Sydney. And go to the way we currently have our lesson plans laid out on our website. And we have just two places to work here. One is for collection highlights, and one is for current exhibitions. So why don't you go to the current exhibitions? And there is this is the lesson plan that I have handed out to you in printed form. So you don't need to look at it or anything like that. But I'm going to sort of share with you something that Tiffany and I found out that we have in common, which is we both really don't use a template, so to speak, but we've given you a template in printed form that we both do use to make sure that we're hitting all the areas that we think we need to. And one of the things that I do as a museum educator is I get a work of art. So if you click on Dennis Marr House of Collective Repair, right there, you'll see what and if you scroll down to the picture, and then maybe click on the picture, I don't know if it gets bigger or not. This is what I start with. I start with a work of art that I know is coming, and I know about the artist, I find out about the artist. I do as much as I can. Very often, all I have is a picture like this that I'm looking at. So that's a big challenge for me because I need to figure out how I'm going to take this work of art and then create something that teachers then use. Because my goal is to bring teachers to the work at the museum. That means I have to convince them that what I am doing at the museum, that the work at the museum does have a connection to their curriculum, something they're always already doing. So I do have an awareness of what is taught in K through 2, what is taught in 3 through 5 content-wise, what is taught in grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. And we try to connect to one of those areas, and then sometimes the work lends itself to a certain kind of presentation, which we then invite people to come and share. So that's very different than a teacher who has already got her curriculum and she knows what's happening, and she needs to look at that and connect to my stuff, okay? So you can that's what I get, and then this is what I find out. If you go down, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom. There's Dennis Marr, who's the artist who that work belongs to. He's on the back side. And way down, we have all sorts of things on our new website. We do everything web-based. You can see related lesson plan there. This is another big shift that's been something we've had to get used to at the museum level. This idea that, yep, go ahead, you can click on it. We do very little printed material. We don't have a budget for it. We don't have the workforce for it. We don't have a way, if we have 4 exhibitions up, to kind of print and prepare packets of printed material for every one of those in hopes that people will want them. We really have gone to very web-based material. And actually, someone who looks at our web constantly, this is a huge change for us over the 16 years that I've been working in the museum world. So we have someone here actually from our marketing department who tells us how many times people hit on our lesson plans with their little clickers or on our website, and we're really, really proud that our lesson plans are the third most common clicked on item. Maria Morielli has told us.
All over the world, not just here in the U.S.
Pardon?
All over the world.
From all over the world, okay? So we are providing a resource that I don't ever even always know whether teachers have used my lesson plan verbatim even, but it's a resource for them to find out about the exhibition, about the artist, and there are always some things I include on it so that they can do that. So this is kind of, it's those teachers who are already doing also what you're expecting teachers to do in Common Core, who are looking at us and saying, yes, this helps, this is great, I don't have to do the work of writing the lesson plan, okay? So this one, I steal ideas shamelessly, okay? This, you can see this right here. It's inspired by an assignment that the artist, architect, and educator Dennis Marr used to develop his students' creative thinking abilities at the college level. And I have adapted it towards basically an entire grade level, and all the grade levels K through 12. So that this is actually the first lesson plan I've written this way, and it's a very creative thing. I've had a lot of fun doing lesson plans. This lesson plan is probably the only one that I've ever done that you have a hands-on activity to do, and then it's the teacher's sort of job to decide what area of curriculum they want to connect it to. So there's one of the bundles. I even brought one here. I could throw it around if I wanted to. You want to? We've had a couple of workshops. We do workshops for educators so that they can see our lesson plans. And then what I do is for a work of art. Now, how does this relate to Dennis Marr's house? It actually, the work that you just saw, he actually, because he's an architect, he thinks in 3 dimensions. And he thinks from the outside in and the inside out, and he goes back and forth all the time. So for him, this is a way of looking at the outside and imagining the inside, or looking at the inside once you cut the bundle open, and you can imagine what's going on somewhere else, or adapt it to something else. So what this particular lesson plan, if you scroll down to, stop right here, okay? So these are the things that I have to figure out. And I'm almost always figuring out the activity and the discussion before I'm figuring out what grade level I'm using. The title comes last. It really does have looking at the work, coming up with an activity or a discussion. The discussions that we use, even in our museums, we teach our docents and we use that same Common Core. Julie kept saying it. She kept saying, you know, what is it in this work of art? What evidence can you find here to support what you have just said? That's what we always ask a student. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Some people are better at it than others, okay? So I come up with the activities and the discussion first. I give background for educators or important notes for educators. These are things that help them when questions come up to answer questions that their students might have. So they need background information. They need to know who the artist is. They need to know what other projects perhaps the artist has done. And so our website is attempting to link all of those things together. I will tell you that in a world where everybody is as pressed for time as we are, this is the reality that also teachers are coming to. We talk to the ones we talk to are on the website, are on the internet all the time, looking for ideas and things like that. You can see we've also built in our New York State learning standards, which in the arts haven't yet gone to supposedly core curriculum, but for all our current exhibitions, I had an intern plot out the entire standards. I should have brought that as a visual. It literally would stretch around this whole room on tag board, and we learned about it and we identify the standards. So they're identified for teachers. That is going to be very helpful for them. They're not going to have to figure out what standards these things satisfy. And they almost always satisfy English language arts ones. Julie mentioned that the art is the text. Okay, so let's go to, keep rolling down so you can see some of the pictures, because this is a really fun one. This is a picture of a bundle that's been cut in half. It was bigger than that one. And this student, whose name is Michaela Barker, and who is a college student, used a toilet paper roll, and she used some plastic parts, so they had a bandsaw to cut their bundles apart. I used a knife, okay? And this is what she came up with, and if you scroll down, this is the idea of the lesson plan. Let's draw it in different ways. There's one drawing. Let's imagine it as a building, a habitat for an animal, a geode or a piece of rock that's dropped down from outer space, and we have to analyze it and try to figure out what kind of community it might have come from. So this is a very open-ended lesson plan. That's her drawing of the building she designed from it. What would I do without you, Cindy? I don't know. Okay, and then these are some more of her things. Click on any one you want to click on. There you go. This is a sculptural project that he did. He has his students at the college level spend their entire semester using that bundle as a source for drawings, sculpture. This one is starts to be her building. She built the building three-dimensionally. That was a map of it. So you can teach, you can use it in whatever direction you want. We had a workshop with teachers. They decide, one of them told me, we're going to use it as, we're going to build edible wraps, and we're going to build them with ideas of color and shape and all that kind of stuff, and then learn about nutrition afterwards with the health teacher. So this is the kind of thing that a creative teacher who's doing Common Core, this is kind of a lesson plan that opens that all up for them. A lot of our other lesson plans that I've done, and maybe, what time is it?
20 after 4.
20 after 4, okay. I want to turn it over to Tiffany. I want to turn it over to Tiffany, but I urge you to explore our website. And I wanted to make sure that most of you know, and I think a lot of you do know, that the art has the material in it. It's just you teasing it out, and then maybe you'll even give it to some great specialist who will identify the core standards. We also do work with teachers to satisfy certain parts of their curriculum closely, and when we do that, we meet with them, because this isn't a cookie-cutter thing. You need to tap into the teacher's strengths as well as the teacher's knowledge of the student's strengths, too. So that's that lesson plan. We have a whole ton of them, and we are redesigning our whole website based on a survey of educators about how they want to find this kind of resource. So that will be coming out in June. And we are working, we have a team in our museum that is working on that. And I don't have that expertise, so it's great to have someone on board who does. So.
Oh, I love that basketball drawing.
Oh, I don't have to give it to you.
Nope.
No,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay. Yeah, it is not a website. I'm telling you what as I was putting this presentation together, I had a PowerPoint. I deleted it last night because I wanted to, because I said, you know what? I'm stripping it down, and all I'm showing is a document. All I'm showing is a lesson plan of something we do, and I'm using it to kind of guide through sort of our thinking process of how we put things together. And it was great that Nancy and I were able to kind of work together on this, because she does come at it from a very different perspective than we do. Yet when you look at our templates, there are so many similarities. But we kind of start in different places. So where Nancy may start with an exhibition that she knows is coming, or a work of art that she knows is coming, at the Buffalo Zoo, because there isn't, though we've had a whole lot of changes at the Buffalo Zoo in recent years, it's different in that we don't have a whole lot of rotating exhibits, or we don't have exhibitions that come for a couple of weeks and go, and then another one that comes in and may stay for months and go. So when we're using our zoo, we're using it kind of as a living laboratory that exists all the time. So the way we start even thinking about a lesson plan is actually by having our mission in our education department, and our mission is to educate unite and encourage people to become involved in the conservation and the preservation of the natural world, blah, blah, blah. But it does drive everything we do. And we also take a look at the mission of the teacher. So we listen a lot to what teachers are telling us about what their students are not successful in, what topics they're studying and may need help in, what they don't feel comfortable covering, because a lot of teachers do not feel comfortable covering science topics. So once we've heard from the teachers and we know how we kind of want to fit in our mission, the very next thing that we do when we're coming up with a program, so now we've got a topic. So in this example, the topic is evolution. A lot of teachers are really uncomfortable covering the topic of evolution. They don't know how to do it sensitively, or what can you and can't you say. So we said, you know what, we'll do it for you. We'll align it to the Common Core. We'll align it to the New York State Math, Science, and Technology standards. And don't worry, we've got you covered. So when you do your evolution unit, we can either begin it for you, we can end it for you, but we'll get it covered. And the place that we start, actually, Cindy, if you could scroll down to where it says goal, because it's actually the first place we start. Right here. This is where we start writing. We try to think of what is our overarching goal and what is the teacher's overarching goal, and we make them come together. So in this instance, teachers really want to cover something about how evolution happens, and that it happens through the process of natural selection. So we start with that goal in mind. And then we kind of do two things together. Nancy mentioned that she kind of starts with an activity. And we sort of do too. We think about what will the students do when they come here, and what parts of our collection connect to the topic of evolution. So we think, okay, maybe the hyena exhibit would be good for that, and maybe our lions and tigers might be good for that, and what activities can we wrap around that? So the next thing we do is, if you can scroll down a little bit more, is to actually start to come up with the schedule, believe it or not, of activities, of what they're going to do. We start to think about what will make sense to use our exhibits for, and what will be fun for the students to do that does relate to what the teachers need them to do. How are we going to engage them so that they remember it? At the same time, I need you to scroll back just a little to the objectives, sorry. At the same time, we're formulating the objectives. And I got to tell you, we're no experts at formulating objectives, and so we definitely use teacher resources that are out there. One of the best things that I've ever seen a teacher use, that I love using, is this handy-dandy little thing here to create objectives of what you want the students to do and to learn by the time they're done. It is the quick flip questions for critical thinking. And if you remember when Julie was talking, when Michelle was talking, really Common Core has a lot to do with critical thinking. So students need to be able to think critically. Well, you can put a lot of the language of the Common Core and critical thinking right into your objectives by just looking at terms in here. On the template that I gave you, if you look on the back, there's also a website that just has this whole thing on it. There's a couple of websites that do, but I gave you a handy one to look at. So we literally will think, how deeply do we want them to think? And you flip to how deep you want them to think, what level of thinking, and sort of Bloom's taxonomy of higher order thinking. Where do you want them to come out in this? Do I want them to be able to comprehend something? Do I want them to be able to apply or analyze? And I flip to those terms, and then you're going to notice in the objectives I've made big the words that do that. Apply, examine and record. There are all sorts of terms that you can use, and honestly, we sort of say we have to know that teachers are going to want this. They need to prove to their principals that we're worth it, so these are the words that are worth it to them. And then you'll also notice over here, these are all of the standards. That's what the principals and superintendents want to see, so that's why they're in there, so that the teacher can prove that bringing us in is absolutely worth it. So once we've formulated the objectives and the activities, we're also thinking about what will students do afterward? How do you extend the experience? Nancy's example was great in that her example was, what can a teacher take? What kind of lesson plan can a teacher take and do with what they will? We're a little bit different in that we're saying, we want you to come to our facility, or we want to go out to you in an outreach capacity, and we'll do it for you. And so this all starts with, I want my educators to be able to replicate this time and time again. But what it ends up looking like is, what can you hand to a teacher to prove it to their principal? It's why this ends up looking the way it does. And in the very end, it's how can you extend the experience beyond their trip to the zoo, beyond if we go with our Zoomobile out to their school, how can you extend the learning experience for the teachers? And that is a way of helping the teachers along so that they know, how can I finish my unit? Or if we're the culmination of their unit, then how can you circle back on it later in the semester when they have to practice for those stupid tests that they have to take? They can do some of those activities. So it's kind of centered around, how is a teacher thinking? How will they use us? And that's kind of how we formulate it. So in that little template that I gave, honestly, this is really what we go from. So I kind of just do this naturally, and Nancy and I both ended up coming up with a template. This didn't exist before yesterday. But it's what we do all the time.
Is the follow-up stuff later in this?
Yeah, if you scroll down to the end, and this is a little bit, this is a great program in that it's a collaboration with Erie One BOCES, actually. So Erie One BOCES collaborates with us on the technology end of it. So this is a program where students learn technology and they learn science content, and they put them together. So students come to us to learn the evolution content, but they learn it the way they want to learn it. So we'll begin the process for them, and then we tell them, take flip cams out on zoo grounds, or bring your iPads or whatever you've got if you have them, but we also supply that we got through a grant. Take them out on zoo grounds, and you're going to explore evolution. There's a reason it's called Beyond Darwin's Voyage. They are doing what Darwin did, but he didn't have technology. So they're acting like the zoo is an island, and they're for the first time discovering these animals and how they might have evolved over time, and trying to figure out what are the relationships among the animals. So they go out on their own. They learn themselves. It's really student-directed. They go out with their flip cams, they take video, and the idea is that they're going to come back and create a documentary, and that is the post-program section of it. They go back to their classrooms with all of their footage. They plan out who's going to be the narrator, who is shooting the footage, who's going to write the documentary, and so that's all ELA stuff that they have to do. They go back to the classroom and they edit their footage. They overlay, they overlay what they want to say onto it, and they come up with a little documentary that then can live forever. And we found that some teachers are so creative. They take that lesson plan. So we've given them the lesson plan so they know what it's all about. They know what to expect when they come here. They take the lesson plan and they kind of plan out. One teacher said, I'm going to bring one of my classes of 8th grade students, and those 8th grade students are then going to use their documentary to teach all of the other 8th grade students about evolution. So that was a really creative way of taking the lesson plan we wrote and extending it, and it lives even beyond the documentary, that all the students learned from that documentary. So teachers are coming up with some amazing things, and it all just starts with our simple, stupid lesson plan. So there you go.
Simple, stupid.